performance has always been something that we've had in our social settings, especially for women. But we're constantly in the quest to curate a sense of self that is uncuratable. What we choose to emulate and perform is because we do seek that community. We are so desperate for community and connection, which clashes with popular platforms breeding competition pits for one to rise above the other or fall into a pile of grays. Hello, this is Brie, and thank you so much for joining me today. How are you? That's good to hear, or I'm sorry about that. Coming to you live from a different angle. It's because I've changed many things around in my bedroom. I am using a folded up piece they just inserted. Now, it's taken a long time to film this video. Lots of different life changes, diagnoses, pending. Not that one that you're thinking of. Another one. I know what you're thinking. It's not that one. But I come to you today with what I hope to be is an interesting video that I've been thinking about a lot. Mostly in terms of my own presentation and because I'm obviously incredibly self-involved and everything has to come back to me at the end of the day, right? Right. I would like to talk about the, I think, dead topic now, but I still feel like it's quite relevant. Performative intellectualism and the ideas of complicit misogyny and creative brainrot. That is the title of this video, patent pending. I actually have a handy dandy Google Doc that I have on my 2017 MacBook Air Intel chip that is still kicking. You can't ever get rid of the kid. The conceit of this video is as follows. 1. It is misogynistic to tell women on the internet that they're being performative and they're talking about niche interests or showing off their genuine intellectuality. But in thinking about this video, and the reason why I decided that it is something that I want to publish is me existing in an online space, and not even an online space like Instagram. Oh my goodness, my bang. Me existing in an online space, and not just an online space like publishing YouTube videos, but an online space like Instagram, Tumblr. I am very, very rarely posting any kind of content that has my face in it. Oh my god, this is actually like, it's showing up in the video in real time. I also have a relationship with myself where I couldn't bear to make a video if I didn't have a look of someone who was a researcher, an artist, a thinker. If I didn't look like someone who should be talking about these subjects. Obviously, I have this sick t-shirt on and I have red glasses, but is it enough? Is it enough? I'm sitting on a floor with office pile. Is it enough? Women and femme-presenting people exist in a largely anti-woman world. I think that there exist two realms of thought that I have within me, where one, women who live in a misogynistic world cannot help but have to present a certain way, look a certain way, talk a certain way to present their ideas on platforms that are run by male-centric algorithms that exist because of the largely colonial mindset of the plundering, collecting, and enslavement of data to be used to further grab resources, aka people's attention, people's interest, people's money. So, I have a couple of things to address. Misogyny exists and it is hard to squeeze out of anything, but there does exist a constant need to perform, which does not exclude intellectualism. A lot of the times, performative intellectualism also is conflated with the performative male, which includes depictions of people who listen to Blood Orange holding a All About Love book with Carhartt outerwear or hats. Maybe, they have a craft market thrifted cowboy boot on. They are wearing, a pair of jean shorts. They have an A-frame boxy, short-sleeved, overshirt on with a wife beater or, kind of quirky / ironic beaten worn t-shirt underneath. Maybe one chain, perhaps 3 to 4 rings. TikTok has a documented history of how it grants virality to certain videos that include attractiveness, lots of movement, lots of animation, big smiles, big hands, big clacks, big noises. This also includes the posing of people, and we pose in everyday scenarios, but it's the holding yourself in one position and talking like this the entire time for a short form video. That's not natural. This goes into my deep dissenting opinions of myself, because I have struggled a lot in many spaces with the idea of my perception as, say, an artist, someone who is interested in technology, who has a background in art and technology, who's interested in, well, I think people would probably think I'm interested in literature. You know what? I shouldn't say that. People might see me and think I look like an idiot. However, to that I say, look at the shirt. In performing intellect, we make it a status and commodify it naturally and create goalposts to rank this intellect. Information overload and inundation of brain-building, curiosity-conscious material leading to tracking reading challenges, creating self-schooling plans, adding to reading lists multiple times a day, thousands of screenshots, a never-ending data stream you'll never catch up on. We're constantly in the quest to curate a sense of self that is uncuratable. Through the amount of images, text, voice lines, sounds that we are hearing throughout our day, way more than we're used to, from a variety of different people, from a variety of different backgrounds. Not only is it making so many more segments of ourselves possible and things that we want to fill with those examples, that we like using those examples to fill those slots, but it also creates a flattening effect. Because most of the internet that as we know it is a commodity that is riddled with capitalism. Capitalism thrives on the structure and economy of language and information and signaling. The easier you make it to signal something, the easier that you make it to understand what you're signaling to another party, no matter what background they're from, no matter what, creed they may be, the better you have succeeded. There's one thing of being a student of life and constantly wanting to learn things, to having a lot of different hobbies and interests, but there's a dizzying amount of stuff that exists. It's hard to focus. It's difficult to craft a true sense of self, because what you have to do is perform the astute, student. You have to perform the wanderlust, whimsical artist. You have to perform the fashion obsessed researcher. You have to perform someone who's completely obsessed with celebrity culture, not in a cringe way, but in a way where you're analyzing the communication styles, ethics, and philosophies that are making us who we are through the celebrities that we are ingesting and that we are close to. When it's just cringe, it can just be cringe, it's fine. And in performing that intellect and making it something that is a commodity, that's a status symbol, we lose out on true community. We lose out on frivolity and flexibility, because we start to have rigid structures and ideas of what we need to be and what we need to do to perform what we're trying to showcase, because of the fact that we're basing it off of pre-existing examples without thinking about what our true selves are. Intelligence then signals status. We have commodified something that is completely intangible because of the fact that we've made it tangible. Videos that discuss people being offline, being able to focus and study as something that is a status symbol within itself, and I definitely agree with that. It doesn't actually sound bad to be someone who makes study talk videos, or someone who makes videos about how to detox from the online space, how to get rid of your addictions. But it becomes bad because it itself is something that is a consumption. You're consuming content online where you're supposed to take it offline or practice it offline. But because it's something that exists online and is made to be consumed, then it becomes a symbol of status, because you can gain the status of someone who signifies an offline, free from internet, non-addicted, internet-addled person. You can attain the status of someone who's a rigorous studier, who has customized Pomodoro clocks. You become that. You do that. You record you doing it, making yourself a commodity and making what you do a status. I am reminded, of course, of Gaia Online DeviantArt. What we choose to emulate and perform is because we do seek that community. We are so desperate for community and connection, which clashes with popular platforms breeding competition pits for one to rise above the other or fall into a pile of grays. This is going back to the way that I'm saying we flatten what we want to be so that we can communicate to the largest, greatest common factor. But in doing that, we lose the nuances of what makes us an individual member as a part of a community group. This then becomes another annoying thing because you have people who are in these niche spaces who might accuse one another of copying, stealing ideas when, okay, I'm so sorry. I can go to TJ Maxx and get the same amount of green and pink, like water bottles, desk accessories, and stationery that someone else can get. And I can get the same L-shaped Amazon boudoir so I can set up a study corner and put up a fucking camera and record myself. And someone might accuse me of copying their boogie. No one wants your dancing shoes. But maybe they do. Maybe we can help but want everyone's dancing shoes because we don't know how to dance. But we really, really want to dance. We've danced a little bit, but we don't think. We say, I don't know how to dance, but I want to be a dancer. So I'm going to steal dancing shoes. Oh my God. So we get our dancing shoes. This also returns to particular content makers having similar styles, similar thumbnails. They have the same hime cut. They have the same short bang. They might even talk in a really similar way. I feel like there's a certain cadence that you expect from certain genres of people in certain spaces. It's like bubbles and bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. Within each of those, the stereotypes don't diminish. They only stack on top of each other. I also do have to admit, though, that this is sort of the current meta. Because resisting brain rot is seen as a status symbol, we are desperate to be creative and to be authentic. But that's brain rot itself, going back to the information overload and the curiosity, crafted, curated content. Once the algorithm senses you're trying to find ways to escape it, it inundates you with countless ways to escape it, to create overload that you can't shake. So you're just rotted in another form. What do I mean by this? So I have this issue with my Instagram, where I'm constantly looking at techno-feudalist content, or I'm looking at experimental archival workshop content. It will continuously suggest different creators, different groups, different pages that echo the same interests that I seem to have. They're always a little bit off. But because my brain in scrolling has become something that immediately is searching for what can I latch onto? What's the thing that is expressing itself in the easiest way to understand for me? I like these posts. I get interested in all of these things. There are so many open calls going on. There's so many community groups doing things. There's so many events. There's so many different online events. Everything is happening all the fucking time. So hours pass where I feel buzzy, because I've just looked at people doing things that I want to do, having thoughts that I want to share, and I'm left, honestly, in a state of kaput, because I don't have the mental bandwidth to parse through everything that I've just taken in. So what happens? I don't do anything with any of it. The next day comes, I try to resist going on Instagram. I go on Instagram to check on something, and then suddenly I'm 10 posts deep because I'm back to being suggested and being interested in content that has to do with soldering, cyberdecks, creative coding, techno-feudalism, matriation. Like, it's all coming together, and it's so fucking much. It's so much. I have a couple of things that I wanted to share that connect to this. I wanted to look through a couple of these videos, articles, and images, and just general media that have to do with what I'm talking about, because I like to use reference material Yes, I am that kind of person. I also want to kind of talk about not just the actual content, like the words that the writer has put down onto these pages, but also look at the presentation of these things. This one is from Polyester Zine, which is titled The Smart Girl Industrial Complex, How Performative, Intellectual, and Placed Being Hot Online. The thing that stuck out immediately to me were very, very Pinteresty, which is combined with The Crucible, The Wretched of the Earth, and Bell Hooks. Rory Gilmore reading Sylvia Plath alongside an image from Legally Blonde. I feel like that is immediately quite telling. This is what I'm talking about, where you present content that is meant to be consumed and you're supposed to sort through it and ingest it and have your own thoughts about it. But because it comes pre-packaged with images that create links and associations so that you can more immediately understand the content and more immediately guess at what is going to be said, what the meanings are, it impacts you and colors the rest of the thing that you're going to be going into I'm going to be referencing writing for the rest of this. I think it kind of sullies the stew. A couple of interesting quotes of new paradigms emerging. The aestheticization of intellect, whereby women are compelled to enact a carefully curated performance of smartness. Performance has always been something that we've had in our social settings, especially for women. But the word curation has been something that I've also been dealing with, thinking about. Everyone is a curator and everyone's curating something. And I do think that we have to start thinking about what curating really means, although it is a really easy word to use. I don't know if it's the best word, but it's certainly the fastest. Crucially, through the growth of mass media, the pressure to conform is widely decimated. Thus, beauty culture acts as a disciplinary structure reasserting hierarchies of gender. I suggest, however, that we're approaching a new frontier for women's self-curation online. It seems that there is pressure to overcome brain rot or lowbrow content. There's this interesting thing that happens between performative intellectualism and other nerdier like subgroups. This is going to be stereotype image of the obsessed like book talk fan who only reads like dark romance. There seems to be a distinction between being nerdy and that being cringe and that being what I would also maybe say this article pokes fun at us sometimes with its use of lowbrow at one point. And actually adding into that, there's also separation from the, as I mentioned before, celebrity like focused woman who's talking about who's doing what, who's wearing what. I find that interesting. A butter yellow scrolling calligraphy font reads anti-brain rot content I have consumed this month. Another video advertises somebody's personal Substack account, which features monetized long-form essays. Captions claim that the most attractive thing a woman can be is disgustingly well-educated and offers products through which to become so. Though, in a lot of this article, there are moments where I'm like, I really agree with you, but I also think you need to look in the mirror, because this is coming from a platform hosting an article which is Substack length or shorter with a heavily girl-atized identity that is behind a paywall. The white rabbit is holding the clock. These posts suggest that even the freedom to learn, read, and think must be packaged and displayed for validation. I think that the use of validation is interesting because it's not completely explained in any further context, but there is this idea, lurking enemy and menace of the male-centered woman and the woman that performs for men under patriarchy. I would suggest and actually bring to the podium rethinking who this performance and validation is for. Now, like I mentioned, we are performing this intellectualism, we're performing these interests, this kind of atypical, interesting sort of person, so that we can appeal to the groups that we really want to be a part of, that we see as being a status symbol to be a part of, whether that be a part of the group that is chronically offline, a part of the group that is fashion addicted and fashion interested, etc., etc. But like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube are, as I mentioned, male pattern boldness. Male-centric is really taking me out. Male-centric algorithms for male-centric platforms. But the paradigm that these videos are performing for is for a largely femme audience. Even the performative male are performing in a way in real life and online for a largely femme audience. Lots of creators can have audiences that are primarily mostly men, young men, whatever, that can fall in line of this idea of like performative intellectualism. But I think that they're honestly a much more rare case. If you go into the comments of some of these videos, I honestly believe that you will see a lot more femme representation. It's a balancing scale to me of who the performance is even for and who made the performance. What script are these new actresses following? And expanding on this, performing is established as being part and parcel of women experiences from long and to now. But it also brings up in this article specific female curating content for women to consume that then skews into the patriarchal. This also reminds me of something that I had, this phrase that came into my mind, like, I don't know how many months ago, but it was like, let's talk about responding to an oversaturated market by saturating the market. And I'm also doing it. It is an Ouroboros. I always talk about the Ouroboros in my videos. I feel like it always goes back to this damn snake. It is incredibly difficult to make content that is almost anti-content, or that is trying to dismantle and decipher the different weird lurking like nastiness behind these platforms, algorithms that are made to put our content out there for consumption. But I do think that there is something about the image that is beginning to form in people's minds of what the researcher looks like. What do they say? Where are they based? And who do they bring up? What references do they make, and how do they make those references? To end on this quote, to be a woman online challenges us to the greatest performance of all, performance defined by whatever consumer's identity is trending. Created intellect is now sold as empowerment. It is just another way for women to self-police. So while I obviously never dissuade a woman from picking up a book, I simply ask her to consider who she is doing it for. This is what I was talking about when I basically said pot kettle about this entire article and this site, because it takes this weird, honestly misogynistic turn. And I feel like a lot of these articles about performative intellectualism took this misogynistic turn where it began to question the authenticity of these women. If we have already established that we are performing for somebody, not just women, but everyone on an online space, I feel like the person, the woman who this article is talking about, is someone who is, one, competing with other women, or two, trying to stand out to men, or both. And I feel like they lost the ball. I'm not even going to say they lost the plot. I don't know. I don't think that they were writing a show. I don't think they were reading a book. But I think they genuinely, what is it, lost the ball? Dropped the ball. I think they genuinely dropped the ball at the last part of this. And this is like this is the clincher. This is like the close of the article. And it feels like there is a true detestment and suspicion of women for going into these spaces and doing what they do best, which is perform. And all of life was a performance, and thank you to that, Liza Minnelli. But I also think that you can genuinely enjoy the content that you're performing. You can live and embody that script without realizing and kind of forgetting that you are playing a role. To kind of go, I think, against what that article was doing, I found another life that I thought was really interesting, which is called In Defense of the Performative Intellectual. I feel like there are very few people who are not in some way going to be able to relate with the experience about holding up a book in various obvious ways in hopes that someone would see it and make a comment. I desperately sought approval from my peers, but more so my teachers, wanting to be recognized by people I deemed smarter than me. The article prior that I was talking about, and also this one, really brought out this monologue that Carrie has, I believe, in season 2 of Sex and the City, where she's talking about Big and her relationship, where she finds that she is constantly thinking about how to position herself, how to hold herself, how she holds things in relation to talking to and being seen and observed by Big, and wanting to get that positive attention, wanting to get those positive comments or affirmation, even doing it over the phone. This is something that I think is also quite interesting in relation to this conversation. Although I've never gone back to that extent, I still catch myself at times holding something in a more pronounced way in hopes that someone might comment. I think that's beautiful. He talks about how people would brag about something that isn't there, about an internship that they're going to be doing, about a book that they have on their reading list. This is more present in my mind now, returning to what I was saying about that information overload, workshops, readings, writings, projects that I will engage with, that I will do, that you will do, that we will do, that we should go to. I didn't arbitrarily choose Didion's work as the face of my act. I chose instead something I had genuine interest in that simply went a bit over my head. I didn't simply want recognition. I wanted community and shared interest. Again, I love this article a lot because it's simple, but it's also quite vulnerable and I think quite true to the human experience, especially thinking about the COVID era resounding effect that has blanketed all of social media and also our actual in-person communication. That how it's made us more introverted creatures who more desperately crave community. And I think that greed, that hunger, is why we end up choosing increasingly fast-spinning ways to signal community, which then often eschews real gathering points. Desperately trying to communicate yourself as a creature of a pack, when you're not actually a part of that pack, I guess in real life, makes it so that some people might actually push you further away, or you may yourself always harbor that feeling like you're not actually in the pack, that you don't actually belong. I'd rather hear about books that haven't really been read or movies that haven't really been watched, but that people have a genuine interest in. You can make references to things and not actually have finished them, not actually have fully looked into them. You can enjoy something without be, the de facto holder of the entire lexicon of what it is and what it isn't. I got a really good article called Shelf Esteem, The Rise of Performative Intellectualism. Decorative books have been around for ages in restaurants, bookstores, commercial spaces, and are by no means new. The problem isn't the decor itself, but what it represents and who it serves. I think this is a really good point about what we were getting at as well. Intelligence has been an accessory for a long time, and it's essentially set dressing. It's easy to, buzzword, curate, and often seed and associated with performative interiors. Now, when your performative interior becomes an exterior that you also need to display, that's when we get into some really interesting things related again back to COVID. COVID, we had that era where everyone wanted to make their house super whimsical, super interesting. They wanted to really transform their space because they're going to be in it for a long time. And that sense of having a place that represents who you are and who you want to be and what you want to do inside of a space that's made for you by you, I think became really, really important. And I think that we are having lots of different responses with micro trends, how fast things are. I think get back to that space that COVID seemed to give, where we had that silence and solitude to realize who we were and what we wanted to do. And we could kind of regurgitate that out onto our interior spaces. There was a reciprocal relationship to that. By paying our interests, we could reaffirm our interests and realize more easily what we liked and what we didn't like. The effort that we put into creating a space for ourselves, by ourselves, made it so that we felt good about the effort that we had put in, and created became matters of convenience and ease. Adorno, a Marxist thinker of the Frankfurt School, wrote extensively about the massification of culture. He criticized the modern cultural industry in which books, music, films, everything had become objects of consumption rather than appreciated art. Now, even pseudo-intellectuals with minds full of theory and substance fall prey to these performances, because we must now look like what we are. We must sell that intellectuality. The value becomes symbolic, not authentic. The point is, what are we doing with culture? Are we letting it transform us, or are we just turning it into yet another item in our shopping cart? This immediately made me think of this video.
What gets lost when a culture is commercialized? This is the question I keep coming back to whenever we talk about K-pop. Because at this point, we already know that the K-pop industry draws heavily from Black culture and that there's a huge need to pay more respect to it. So instead of asking whether it appropriates Black culture, it does. I want to ask a different question. What is the cost of that appropriation on artistic integrity? I recently watched this video from Shannon Kim, and in it she references the following Herbert Reed quote. "You cannot impose a culture from the top. It must grow from under. It grows out of the soil, out of the people, out of their daily life and work. And if that joy does not exist, the culture will not exist."
I think a truism here is what happens to the culture. Culture is something really important to underpin because culture is related to the group. if you have something that is developed by a group, that is co-signed by a group, and you, just one person, are wearing it and using it to adorn yourself with genuine sincerity or otherwise, and another person is doing that, something that is a part of a group becomes fractured. You all may be doing something but not be in communication with each other, and you might also have a completely different ethos when it comes to what you're doing. Group functioning and culture functioning fractured leaves people in these weird spaces and dynamics. I think that this article was really spot on by talking about the look of what we want to be. We want to have those symbols and those images that we can immediately connect and digest to understand something without having to think about it for very, very long at all. Now, there was this really interesting article in the crockpot of BS that is The Guardian called "We Are Living in a Period of Political Anti-Intellectualism, but in pop culture, clever is the new cool." Fuck off, by the way. Now, this Guardian article is a bit longer than all of the other ones I was reading, and I definitely think it was much more dense. Some standout things are the ideas of intellect and glamour flirting hard, which the writing is very, very cheesy to me in this article. No offense to the woman writing, I guess, or some offense actually. But I do think that that pop culture talk does get at something that is very real. We're buttering up brains with frills, pearls, and ruche skirts. And I don't know if that's exactly a bad thing, but I do think that it is something that does worry me, where our genuine interests have to be something that are communicated as efficiently as blocks in an arena board, you know? Thinking about this also made me consider the idea of rabbit holes that I was talking about, I think maybe a video or two ago. It immediately made me wonder about Gen Z and Gen Alpha being positioned next to each other so much, and if like one generation has secured the idea of being like brain rotted, which makes the other generation vehemently despise like any associations with being brain rotted because of the fact that there's this natural like weird contempt between generations. As we reach our 30s and settle into our 20s, stretching across the age outliers, is intelligence something intangible that we desperately desire to make visible to put ourselves apart from that idea of being a rotted generation? I think a lot of people are talking about how they've given up on the kids. People don't want to be the kids no more. People don't want to be associated with being a brain rotted, adult. Because it's not only like Gen Alpha, it's also like people consider millennials to be brain rotted. They consider, like, they think boomers are like, boomers and AI go like that. So I can't blame them. And that's something interesting that this article pointed out was how Kim Kardashian in 2018 deciding to become a lawyer and enter the bar was the precursor to signaling this fascination with putting pretty glasses on while you're at the library reading like Marxist literature. This article also mentions The White Lotus and how the books functioned as a character shorthand, was also a visual assertion that thought could be televisual. Dog-eared copies of Wuthering Huts on the trains, sudden ubiquity, lending it the air of a seasonal accessory. Book clubs have proliferated, hosted in bars or online spaces, with discussions as much about identity and feeling as it is about plot. A culture saturated with surfaces, the book becomes proof, if not of depth, then at least of the desire for it. I think that was a really good one. I think that really ate. Being smart is sexy now. Not only the kind of sexy that makes people fancy you, but the kind of sexy that generates discourse. The kind of sexy that accrues value. The flip side of a dumbed down world is that the thought has scarcity value, and what is rare has always been hyped. Clock that.
We'll return after these messages.
Got a tea, had a snack, reapplied, ready to go. I hope everyone had a nice intermission from the discussion. Let's get back into it. Where's politics in all this? It used to be the way for young people to engage with the world of ideas. They gathered to talk about revolution, not 19th century fiction. But with politics now a war zone, who can blame the youth for tapping out? With an assertive strain of modern conservatism consolidating power in the US and overt political expression becoming more risky, education offers a way of remaining intellectually active without stepping into the blood and gore of the culture war coliseum. In a fractious and even dangerous world, reading, quoting, and learning are ways to signal seriousness and curiosity without inviting backlash. As political discourse grows coarser, culture finds new places to store complexity. What I said to this was, what the fuck is this paragraph actually saying? And I said it felt really sloppy. This was quickly followed by, intellect is more niche. This is about people who want to reflect on the world, not just because they want to conquer it to make money. The online reading community is a place where we can talk about things like the patriarchy in an accessible way through the lens of stories and characters, and I think that can feel healthier. What are you saying? What are you saying? Like, that was like my initial reaction, and I think I was probably like stood like staring at my computer after reading that, trying to really go through what I was feeling. Now, after I think talking about this for a little bit and thinking about it more broadly, I can understand the idea. I disagree completely with the second part of that, which came from It's Brown. But I do see where it can be stated that the pursuit of knowledge within itself is not a political act. Oftentimes, education and academia has been used to gatekeep minority groups in such a way that education would actually be seen as a quite actively political decision. But it is not itself a political act. The dispensing of education is a political act. The way that you get educated is a political act. But not actually getting an education, like going to school and everything, but it's not itself political. The genre of men that is so hated as being performatively intellectual, within themselves, I think, hold the multitude of meanings where we question how someone who presents as a liberal mask person could have such vehement stances against women in action, but not in word or saying. How they could say all of the right things about love and self-care and systemic like violence and oppressive structures, but still write like a horrible email to the woman who like interviewed like them and their wife and other partner. I'm directly referencing something quite recent. I do think the lookism of intelligence does also play into stripping away the actual teeth from intelligence of learning, along with the fact that these platforms aren't entirely silencing these things, but they are making it so that you're overwhelmed by it. You cannot actually learn and you cannot actually succeed in any other kind of educational objective if you are embodying constantly looking at embodiments of that education and that desire to learn that you have. Intelligence is newsworthy in attractive women because brains and beauty have for so long been cast as opposing traits. The clever woman was frumpy and feminine and difficult. The beauty-brains binary, which served the patriarchy well, has been internalized. If there is something slightly irritating about watching the already glamorous add intellectual credibility to their portfolios, as we may as well own it, there's also something quietly radical in the refusal to dim one quality in order to legitimize another. I thought that felt quite flat because we do expect women to have it all in our world. And I do think it conflates the already highbrow, male hot woman with the sexy woman attribute that we have in our heads, aka like women that men find sexy or attractive versus women that women find sexy and attractive. I do think that the thing that's really, really been pissing me off is what hinges across all of these articles is the idea that attractive people or hot people, sexy people can also be smart or want something beyond what they present. It's like, what do you mean? Do you see like why this article is sort of like boongy and like ass? Oh, and here's a couple of other stupid things. Any attempt to reduce this to books versus phones will gain you a B- at best. Genuine skills and knowledge are also becoming more prized in online content and within commerce, says Green. Look at the emphasis on athletes, footballers, hockey players, and pro skaters as the new fashion, luxury influencers and partners. Cultures looking to people with genuine skill. I think this is stupid. I also think that this next one is stupid. Instagram wants the internet of aspiration is losing ground to Substack, where depth, voice, and argument are given a modern spin, with thinking monetize its expertise plus personality. Podcasts do bring long-form thinking into culture's fluffier regions. I think this does a lot for Substack, and it's kind of a cope and also kind of a lie. People make Substacks after being on Instagram, creating an audience upwards of 20K. Let's not act like visuals are going to actually beat visual words. I also think that Substacks have become a place where people don't have to rely on visuals, but they kind of do have to rely on visuals, and it's all prose speak with the occasional like reference that's popped in there, APA style. Let's zoom in on what I read before. Culture is looking to people with genuine skill. There it comes again, culture. We're talking about culture, we're talking about the group. We're talking about something that is pre-existing, that has actual merit and actual meaning, that is being whittled down to loan word associated with a group of people. Groups of people, it's not a culture make. It is unified ethos, unified action based in a tradition of thought and movement that makes a culture that is composed of group, right? I think that there is something about what we have going on. We have a lot of different moving parts here, but let's kind of trail them into each other. As Sky says in this article, it's a really silly idea that everyone who loves books is austere and highfalutin and couldn't possibly enjoy the lowbrow or ornamental. As she says, she can, she does, and she will again. There is something really camp and really fun about being in an outfit enjoying a book. Being in an outfit and doing something that you like to do. If being in an outfit that makes you feel good, makes you feel even better when you're doing something that makes you feel good, then that's wonderful. Issues arise when, one, the outfit is meant to signal something, and the outfit is meant to signal something by itself, but in combination with the new accessory, the interior made exterior, made into a small, simple, visual item like a book. The meanings compound. We are taking something that is full of information, story, character, that is just full in general, packed, denser than its outside appears, and we are narrowing it into an icon that can be computed by other eyes as fast as possible. By doing that, things that we adorn ourselves with make us who we are. That in turn makes it so that we also narrow ourselves as we piece into the different things that we fastened onto ourselves. Combine this with the idea that literature is a lifestyle and knowledge is a brand is exemplified in our present day by the idea that we are constantly obsessed with reinvention and with product placement within ourselves. We want to be consumed. We want to be consumed by our peers and by our interest groups. Interest groups is not people who are a part of the thing that we're signaling. They're people who want to own what we signal. This is a language, a lifestyle, a practice, a structure of taking, consuming, violence, degradation, and speed, all incredibly within lines of the patriarchal structure of capitalism, which is then smushed and mushed into this horribly confusing air traffic control map of what is going on the internet. And I think that is where the performative intellectual really becomes a complicated and confusing thing to discuss, because we are all performing. Making deep references and using like 1984 double speak in casual conversation because you think it's a meme and it's ironic is a form of performative intellectualism. You are signaling something that is a part of an in-group that is excluding people who may not be with it, who may not know what you're doing, may not know what you're talking about, which is the way that people who are outside of educational spaces, academia, etc., who might not be able to have access to or even plumb know about what you're talking about feels when you bring up a book, a piece of art in a certain tone or a certain way. A certain tone or a certain way. That might be a stretch. I don't know. I'm also performative intellectual. What does it even mean? I know that a lot of people use it toward men, but I do truly believe that it's like a misogynistic ideal. But I also think that it's a complicated thing because the women specifically feed into the misogyny of it all. But so do all of us, I guess. I can't imagine, like, what else are you supposed to do? I have on my little glasses because I think that they look good on me, but did I also pick them because I know that it's a shape that is in now and also associated with like a certain marker of intelligence or a certain person who has certain interests? I don't know. I can never tell anymore. I don't know. It all comes back to why I have always struggled to make any kind of like content for long periods of time, because the person who I am becomes complicated by the thing that I'm supposed to be. And it's confusing and quite difficult, especially as someone who, I largely built my interests online, and I was very isolated in real life because of like my interests. Now, is it a situation where if I had been a child who could go out more or was more like inclined to try to find peers, I could have? Potentially, completely, yeah. But that just wasn't my experience. And it wasn't until I got into high school that I really felt to kinship with people who had really similar music interests to me, who were interested in the things that I was talking about and would adopt them themselves. And it's not early high school either. Like this is like sophomore to junior year, starting to get comfortable. Re-traumatized in college, go to grad school. Now I'm here. There are a lot of things about myself that I feel like I'm just beginning to understand, and a lot of things that I've always had questions about that I feel more interested in getting answers to. And that includes the idea of my presence as an online person talking about the things I like to talk about. I have other interests about other shit. I want to talk about Dead or Alive, the game. I want to talk about manga that I've been reading. But there are such specific ways to go about that I feel like I have not yet understood nor mastered. As FK Twig said, where are the thinkers? So, how do we address all of these issues? How do I solve my problems with myself? I am not sure. But I have a couple of solutions. 1, don't be a misogynist. This is difficult for all of us because misogynism is inherently baked into most of our brains and in the structures that we have to engage with on an everyday basis. It's difficult to not be a misogynist, but I believe in you, and I believe in myself too. Do things that you see. I can't tell you the amount of bookmarks I have. I can't tell you the amount of things that I've looked at and been like, ooh, I'm gonna do this. I haven't touched a thing. Do it! Spend the money that you must if you must, but do it. You have to do it. In moderation, of course. I think the best thing about being incredibly frugal is that it pushes me to have to interact with outside forces because I am very disinclined from buying myself a soldering iron if I don't need to. But you know what I will do? Go to a DIY workshop. But you know what I will do? Go to a DIY workshop. Which goes back to go to the places and things you've saved and that you're interested in. I actually am developing this like really confusing but like compelling thing to me about using screenshots as a framework for actually tracking your interest in real time. And I believe that there's something about screenshotting and saving mindlessly that captures our trigger senses. I might make a separate video about that or talk about it in another way, I'm not sure. But all of that to say, go to the garden party. Gonna be completely realistic. If you're gonna be completely net addled and you're gonna be totally like you're scrolling all the time, saying things that you constantly want to do, not doing anything about them, it's assumed in internet culture, obsessed with the net researcher of any genre, of any country, creed, or city, but usually a big one. Get a support group and get some friends going. I know that Ryan had a Discord at one point, and although my time in it was short-lived because I got overwhelmed really easily, I made like 1 or 2 people. I made 1 or 2 friends off of that thing, and it was nice to detach from the sort of like frenzy of all of the people coming in, like everyone talking, and to have like 1 or 2 people that I could like specifically at or go to their pages and see what they were up to and share interests together. That is a good way to confront what is the reality, which is hard to get off the internet, but also make that community happen again, make that group happen again, combine together to create a culture or tap back into the culture that you are interested in. Thank you so much for listening to me. I feel like this was pretty unstructured. I hope that it was easy enough to follow along with, but if it wasn't, feel free to complain about it in the comments below. Tell me everything that you think about performative intellectualism. Is it fun? Do you hate it? Are you an actor or an actress yourself? Do you like the stage? Do you enjoy Broadway? Are you new to it? Are you true to it? Did you grow to it? Were you formed from it? I would like to know everything. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me on my lore. It's been a good time, I think. Hopefully this all completely recorded okay, because I don't feel like recording it again. See, previous crash out. And yeah, I hope that I can start making videos again, especially now that I have tidied my room more and I think I have more of a sort of schedule. Oh my gosh, also, thank you so much for 100 subscribers. Very exciting for me. I really much appreciate it. I think it is super cool, and I just came back like on YouTube and I was checking, I was gonna change something in the description, and I saw and I was like, what the fuck? I was gonna say what the frick, because I was raised in the church. But I have a really bad pouty mouth. But yeah, thank you so much for the continued support. Appreciate everyone who has left comments or likes or anything like that on any of the videos, or if you have followed me on my Instagram. I know that you have seen nothing there, but I'll get to it. I'm also excited to eventually post about the new website that I've made, and hopefully I can get some things going with creating workshops, interest groups, etc., etc. But obviously, I'm a product of the things that I talk about, and I also might have an actual medical reason behind my inaction and activity. So you can't get mad at me anymore, or I'll call you ableist. Anyways, thank you again. I can't think of any housekeeping to do on the back end, and I pretty much jumped into everything immediately on the front. So yeah, I appreciate you buzzing on by, and I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day.